One. Hello, and welcome to another episode of WOCA Style. Today, we'll be talking about dealing with grief. Before we get into that, though, I want you guys to say hello to my co-hosts Sharita and Sonia. And I noticed that I forget to introduce myself. So I am Kaz, and we have decided to start off a series for our mental health series, and we want to talk about grief. And today's special guest is Tony Ramirez. She is a very good friend of mine. We've known each other over 15 years, and she's got a very interesting journey to share with us about how she deals with grief. So we want to explore that and learn from her. And before we do that, can you just tell us how you got to this place? Give us some information or some background on your son, Gene, and how we got to this place today.
Absolutely. I have two sons. Anthony's 25 and Gene was 28. On January 10th of last year, he came home a few days before to spend time with Carlos and Anthony because I was living in Hawaii at the time. And then all of a sudden, the day of, on January the 10th, I received a message from Carlos saying that something is wrong with Gene. I called back and I couldn't get a hold of them, but finally, when I did, they were looking for him because he just took off on foot. So I'm over there just like desperate because I couldn't understand what was going on. Well, it turned out that when they found him, he had died by suicide, very close to the house. To say that I was in shock, it's just an understatement. We couldn't understand what was going on. I know that he have had a girlfriend and they had broken up like a week before, but we didn't know that he was struggling with his mental health at all. And then so Carlos was here with Anthony. I had to fly from Hawaii overnight to get here, and I was just still in shock. I just couldn't understand. I went into this state that it was just like surreal, like I was watching a movie or I was in a bad dream, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to get up and everything was going to be fine. So
when you had to fly here from Hawaii, that's a very long flight.
It is, yes. Yeah, it was an 8-hour flight overnight.
I just can't imagine the thoughts going through your head during that flight. And you were by yourself?
Yes, I was by myself. It was just horrible because I just couldn't understand what happened. I had spoken to them the day before, and Carlos never mentioned that he was concerned about anything. Everything was just fine. Anthony had just flown in from Colorado from a trip that he was in. And so I, in my mind, I'm just like trying to figure out what happened, because he didn't own a gun, but he purchased it here in Texas.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, so I was just like, just trying to think about if I missed anything, if he said something and I didn't catch it or anything, but I had not had time to talk to Carlos and ask him what happened. And to be honest, I was just like so worried about having to ask him and having, to have him go through the same thing again. I was, a million things went through my mind.
Yeah. So, sometimes when people die by suicide, and you know what, it's so funny because I cannot stand the phrase commit suicide.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I feel like the word commit is like you committed a crime.
Exactly.
I don't like that. So when people die by suicide, you always ask yourself, well, what did I miss? Were there any signs? Like, was
Hmm.
he going through anything in particular? And so you've run that through your head, and there's nothing that could have led you to believe this would ever happen.
That's correct. He was 28. He was living in Florida because he was working with the Tampa Bay Rays. And we had multiple occasions where we would fly over there. He came to Hawaii in Thanksgiving, and we spent time together, the three of us. And then in December, around Christmas time, he took his girlfriend to Hawaii, and we spent time again. And he was just so happy. We were making plans. The day
Mhm,
before he passed, Carlos was telling me that they were just having a fun conversation. He invited him to smoke a cigar. They sat down there for hours. And he had no clue that something was wrong. He didn't say anything that would make him think that he was saying goodbye or anything that day.
mhm.
Um, so, we were in complete shock.
Yeah, it sounds like he could have been suffering in silence. Like he was just trying to hold it in for you guys, trying to keep it all together until he got to a
Absolutely.
point where he just couldn't anymore. And that's the
Yes.
scariest thing because honestly, what could you have done differently?
Yes, exactly. My mom asked me, she said, there's gotta be a sign that you saw, and we really didn't until it was too late. When you have adult children, they live away from you. When you
Mhm,
see them, it's usually just like to hang out and stuff like that. So we never had conversations about his mental health or anything, because I didn't think anything was going on. He was always so kind and always so funny and always so happy. And he had the job of his dreams. He
mhm.
absolutely loved working with the Tampa Bay Rays. And so I didn't think anything was wrong, because he was making plans, for a near future. He wanted to purchase his house. He wanted to get another car and all kinds of things. And he had signed a contract, a 2-year contract, a few days before. So there was no indication that something was wrong. Now, about his personal life, I don't know what was going on in his personal life, because he never discussed anything. And I
Mhm.
would think, like any other, adult child, it would be just like, that's their private life. And I didn't really pry and ask anything. I was like, is everything okay, when we would talk to each other? And he would be, yeah, everything's great, mom. Yeah, everything's good, having fun. So he never told us there was something, in his personal life going wrong.
Yeah.
Can you repeat how old? I know you said you had one 28-year old, and how old
Yeah, he was
was
28.
Gene?
Yeah, Gene
Gene
was
was
28.
28.
Yes, Anthony's 25. Yes, ma'am.
And
Yeah,
so
he's
it's
the oldest.
Gene, the 28-year-old.
Yes, he was the
Okay, that
oldest
we're,
son. Yes, ma'am.
I mean, because I'm thinking, um, and I am somebody who has um close relatives, specifically uncles on
Mm-hmm.
my paternal side, and aunt and cousins on my maternal side,
Mm-hmm.
who suffer from serious mental illness. So that is something that I used to stay up at night. Even myself, when I was in my 20s,
Mm-hmm.
because I think I was in college, and I think I was taking a psychology class,
Mm-hmm.
and I recall in that psychology class that mental illness often shows up in your 20s.
Mm.
Um, and so you can be leading a perfectly normal and healthy life, and you can
Mm-hmm.
be you can present very well to your family and to your
Mm-hmm.
friends. You wouldn't think that anybody, like your son, was suicidal if he was making plans, because usually you
Correct.
don't make plans if you're planning to to not be here.
Mm-hmm.
um And so I always thought for myself that my genes were going to betray me at some point, and I was going to have to deal with this. And I also used to fixate a lot because they say, I read, I think it was in this class, that mental
Mhm.
illness often skips a generation. So
Mhm.
I was obsessed with, with saying who's in every generation, who has something that's deemed a mental illness, and
Mhm.
will it skip me? Um, but it is something that I stressed over a lot. My grandmother used to always tell me that the mind is like a piece of thread; it could snap at any time. So
Mhm.
you just never know. But today we are also experiencing an overwhelming number of young adults
Yes.
who are experiencing this. And if we were to put it in media or celebrity terms, like the Twitch automatically comes to mind. This guy
Mhm.
was dancing around and happy every day.
Oh, is
um
he the one who's he's
uh-huh.
a DJ for Ellen DeGeneres? Oh, okay, yeah, I
Yes.
remember.
Mhm.
Yes. So there are no indications. And then the other thing too is kids don't, especially boys, they tell you exactly what they want you to know.
Yes.
um and so you never know. So I guess I say all of that to say, um is do you have a history of mental illness in your family, and this is the way it presented itself, like?
No, ma'am. This was the first case in our family. No mental illnesses whatsoever. So the kids growing up, you know how they are teenagers and they go through their moods and stuff like that when they're growing up. He was always a happy boy. He was very quiet. He would keep to himself. He loved music, he loved art, and he had lots of friends, but he wanted to have like a small circle of friends. So only a few of them knew him really well, but he played baseball, so he was very well known in our community.
Mm-hmm.
And he just had a normal life growing up. So there was nothing like I can tell you that I never had a conversation at the dinner table about mental health because we didn't think that we needed to. I didn't see anything that would concern me. And I guess like growing up in a Hispanic family, those are things that you don't just bring up just to talk about mental health, especially
This doesn't this
males.
yeah this doesn't work in black families either.
Exactly. So it's not a conversation that it was prevalent. Unless something happened, it would not be a conversation at the dinner table like when we were growing up either. So, we never talked about it.
Yeah,
So
that's
this is
really
also, this happened last year.
Yes.
And this is very new.
Very new. Yes, ma'am.
It's very fresh.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
but you look well. How are you doing this?
What you see here, it's the power of God. I am a mom. I am devastated. I am trying to navigate this new life because the person I used to be before my son passed, it's no longer.
yeah.
I turn into this, different person. But one thing that I just made sure was I had baptized when I was in Hawaii, and I think God was preparing me
Mm.
for what was coming. So when this happened, it was just total devastation. But at the same time, I can tell you that I was never angry at him. I just couldn't understand why we were picked, why our family. But one thing I can tell you, it's that I know that he knew that I love him above all and I trust him above all. And if he said, this is what I want for your life, this is the purpose I have for you, he knows that I would never say no. So when people say, "Oh, you're so strong, I couldn't do it," this is the grace of God, that what you're seeing.
Wow.
He's allowing us to put one foot in front of the other, because some days we're like, okay, we're doing okay, but even on the okay days, the pain in our heart is, it's there. We're
Mhm.
just learning how to just live with, this new reality, especially because I have a 25-year-old and I need to make sure that I'm present, that I enjoy him, because he's
Yeah.
a blessing that I still have.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can imagine him, trying to, still trying to stay strong for you, but yet still having to grieve for his big brother, and maybe he's not as strong in his faith as you. So, but it's something that he's going to have to grasp onto. And I feel like, grief is a very tricky process that eventually everyone will have to deal with.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And so,
absolutely.
what works for you, obviously, is your relationship with God, right?
Exactly. Yes, ma'am.
The so there are people who don't have that relationship. How do you help them? How do you get them to get on the other side of grief? And I know that grief takes time; it's a process.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What would you say to them, as they go through this grieving process?
Well, the first thing is, like, if you don't believe in God, I when I do our presentations, I don't force religion into them, but I tell them, one thing that it's keeping me going, it's believing that there's a God, and He is, um, part of the plan that He has for our family. But you need to have people that are close to you that you can talk to,
Yes.
and you need to know that it's okay to have professional help.
Wow.
There's
This
nearly
is very
50
key.
yes, there's nearly 50 million Americans, that are suffering with mental illnesses.
Wow.
50 million. And many of them are not treated. Some of them are untreated. But the thing is that the stigma and the way we have been raised and stuff like that has created this negativity around mental illnesses, around asking for help without being just put in a box that, or you're crazy or you're different. So I
Or
would
you're
say,
weak.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly. Yes, because asking for help for many people, it just, makes them think that they're weak. But there's certain things that you can control, and I'm telling you, this is one of those things that you cannot do on your own. You
I think
absolutely
that
cannot do on your own.
I think that the therapy and seeking professional help is really key,
Absolutely.
in the grief process.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a spiritual person, certainly leaning on your church, your church pastors, that is
Mm-hmm.
something. I said earlier, and I've thought about it. I've had battles back and forth with our God, and I would just the fact that it just seems to be a conflict of
Mm-hmm.
ideas, that there is grace, that you can see the grace in this situation. And I say that you're an exceptional person because I think the grief process for a lot of people would put them head to head in opposition with
Yes,
God
I
during this
agree.
time because to lose a child, you're like I've been good. I've been faithful. I prayed.
Mm-hmm.
I ask for grace and mercy every day, and this is the way it shows up. It's hard to see that, and we don't understand everything, and we lean into that. But
Mm-hmm.
until we can get there, I think that we definitely need to be advocates for professional help. It's not a sign of weakness
Right.
at all.
Mm-hmm.
This just talking these things out can be so empowering, and it can be talking is medicinal, for sure.
Yeah, one thing that helped me was to understand that our son and us as a family, we had such a beautiful relationship that the way that I saw it was that he was in such deep pain that he couldn't hang on anymore.
Mm.
And I see it not as God punishing us, but I see it as maybe God just understanding the situation that he had and just allowing him to rest. Because I truly believe that God understood and he gave him grace, and I know that he's in heaven with God and we're gonna see him again. So when you look at it from that perspective, that the person is probably suffering so much that not even the love that you have can let him see what's ahead and the possibilities, then you see it as okay, so God is not punishing me because it's his son too, you know.
Yeah.
And I love my son with all my heart as a human, right? But then, that divine love, it's much much greater. So I never saw it as a punishment. I think that he understood that my son just, that it was just too much pain. So that helps. And it's something, faith, like the faith we have is just something that is hard to understand.
Yeah, it is because you can't see it. You can't.
Exactly.
It's just something that is.
Right. And then, if I see and rationalize the situation, I have my moments that I get angry in the sense that, my gosh, all the things that he's missing, the things that he could have been doing, especially like now when baseball started and baseball was like his first love. And, it just breaks my heart just seeing, okay, another season that he's going to miss and things like that. But, I pray and go back to the same premise that he's resting,
Yeah.
so it helps. It helps.
I think I read somewhere where it says that when children who die by suicide, their parents usually don't make it. Like they don't,
Hmm.
they end up breaking up. How have you and Carlos worked through that and trying to stay strong for Anthony?
Well, first of all, therapy. Second
Mhm.
of all, we have a tremendous amount of friends that are always praying for us, that are always, checking on us and stuff like that, and that helps. Having that support system, because yes, if you don't have support, it's very easy not to want to live anymore. Because
Wow.
the pain, especially like at the beginning, is like, because I asked myself, I'm like, why not me?
Mm.
Why not me? You could have kept my son and, here with his dad and his brother, and, if I would have given you my life, but then you realize, it's like I look back and I'm like, I don't know if he could have handled that.
Wow.
Or
Yeah.
be me instead of him, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
because I know, and I didn't realize how much faith he had, because obviously, we were Catholic growing up and stuff like that, but we were not at church all the time, and I didn't realize until he passed, and then I started seeing all the um all the tattoos. He had Jeremiah 29:11. He had another verse, even though I'm in the valley of shadows, those kind of things. And I started looking, and then I realized, and then he had a big tattoo on his arm, and it was just like steps into heaven. And when I asked him, he said that is the journey, that is the journey of life, leading to heaven.
Mm.
So all of those things gave me peace. I was like, okay, so that means that he had the opportunity to, ask for forgiveness, to be understood, and he's fine. But yeah, it's very easy to say, you know what, I don't want to live anymore. I don't
Right.
want to get up.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to get up. I don't want to do anything, because it's basically living with half of your heart.
Oh,
It's the way it feels. It does.
Kaz, you touched on something about how I'm sorry, I'm thinking about how grief impacts a relationship, and
mhm,
it's so true, because imagine, especially a mother, who you naturally assume it's going to impact the hardest, and
Mm-hmm.
you're in a state of misery,
Mm-hmm.
and grief every single day, and you're inconsolable. So
Mm-hmm.
there's really nothing that your partner can do or say that gives most people comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And that over time, you know, it causes cracks in the relationship that just become just uncrossable.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, um, and so I also saw that statistic where a lot of marriages uh, end as a result of the loss
Mm-hmm.
of a loved one.
you
Yes,
also,
no, it's huge, sorry, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's huge. We decided from the beginning that even though we didn't understand the reason, we didn't know what had happened in his life or anything, we said, you know what, we're just gonna be one. But we have been married for 32 years,
oh,
so that helps,
yes,
and we said, you know what, we have been a solid marriage, and now we have to be even, closer, because we have a son,
hmm,
and we need to show him that we can get through this as a family,
That's amazing.
and I'm telling you, we pray together. We sometimes, he's having an okay day and I have a terrible day, and we talk about it, which is something that, we were not used to talking about feelings before, or talking
yes,
about being depressed, or talking about anything that had to do with not feeling well, and now we are able to sit down and open up and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling today, and we pray together, and then we do things together all the time, just to make sure that we feel supported by each other.
Wow, that's
I was gonna ask, so you said
Hmm.
you still have your other son, 25-year-old. Did,
Yes.
did he seek therapy as well?
He did not want to, but because I was going through therapy, and I was learning techniques and learning ways to cope. Every time I had therapy, then we would sit down and we would discuss it.
so you were his therapist.
Yes, because that's what they would say. Well, I can talk to you. I'm like, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, yeah.
but yes, it's just hard for them to express. Especially, I have learned that people don't talk about it, and one of the reasons is that they don't think that you're going to be able to relate,
Yeah,
so it's sometimes it's just harder to explain to someone that what you're feeling, because you just can't imagine the way it is. You
Not,
don't know.
not unless they've gone through it themselves.
Exactly. So, so being
well,
that
this,
we are in the same situation, then it's, he's able to tell us exactly how he's feeling, and we talk about it. And we have told him, if at any point it becomes too much, we need to take you to therapy,
yes.
you know.
So you mentioned earlier that you have like a very big group of friends
Yes.
um, around you. What were some of the things that they did to help you get through it? Like, what are some of the things that you really appreciated in your friends, besides the obvious praying for you and
Mm-hmm.
bringing meals and stuff like that? But what are some of the things that people can say to help people through the grieving process? I always feel super awkward when a
Yes.
friend of mine has gone through something, and I'm just like, I don't know what to say. So what do? I send them a bunch of stuff. I just
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to, it's really awkward for me. I don't know what to say. I don't want to be insensitive. I don't want to hurt, I don't want to cause any more hurt. So what do we say? How do we do that?
I think it's important for you to understand that the process of grief is very bumpy. And sometimes you'll feel like you want to talk to people, and sometimes you just want to just be on your own, you know. So I have friends that they ask me, how are you feeling today? Do not be afraid to ask, how are you feeling today? And maybe the answer is going to be, for a while, I'm not feeling well, I'm feeling terrible and stuff like that. But allowing that person just to express the word they're feeling, and just talk about their loved one. Sometimes we think that if we talk about their loved one, they're going to cry, or they're going to be sad. I am sad all the time. I just cope with it, but I'm sad all the time. If someone talks about my son, they're not reminding my son, because I have not forgotten my son.
Yeah.
So knowing those things, knowing when the person needs to just sit down with you and not talk. Because I've had situations where my friends say, do you want to go get a cup of coffee? And I will tell them, I just don't feel like talking. And they're like, no, we're just going to sit down and not talk. And we need to be okay with just like having the company of someone, especially like for us as well, because it's hard to, like, sometimes get up in the morning and I feel like hanging out, and I feel like doing things, and I can see my mood just like going down, immediately. And by the time I get dressed, I'm like, oh, I don't think I want to get out again, or I don't think I'm ready to go out. It took me a while at the beginning, to speak to other people, but they would call, they would say hi, they would say, I am here for you. Whenever you're ready, just let me know. And giving you that freedom to express yourself and to navigate through grief. It's the most wonderful thing you can do for someone, especially at the beginning.
There's these two things that always happen when somebody is experiencing grief and you want to be supportive. And I'm like you, Kaz. I never want to be the person that says, you know, and I have a colleague at work who's gone through the same thing as you, and um I want to hug her, and I want to say, do you need anything or whatever. But I never know if today is the day that she's having a great day. It could even be a great moment. And you saying, how are you doing? And even maybe the way you say it, how are you feeling today? Is everything okay today? And that takes her right back. Like you're putting her in that moment. So a lot of times we don't ask how you're doing, because we don't want to be the one that reminds them of it. But the flip side of that is, and where a lot of people fall, they say a lot of people who are going through grief are very supported for like the first couple of weeks, first couple of months.
Oh, yes.
There's somebody there calling, checking, sending that casserole over, and then
it stops.
they're ghosts, they're silent.
Yes.
And this is really when the grieving process really starts. I talked about somebody that I know who lost a son, who said she didn't start grieving for 7 years. Well, nobody would ever think, but you don't think that it starts that long, but 2 weeks is not enough time. You still need to check on your friends and your family and everything. But how do you? Well, you actually kind of explained it. Your friends are persistent. It sounds like.
Yes, they
so
are.
if you don't feel like it, they're going to call back, and I think that that's what people should do. You At the risk of making a pest of yourself, you should keep checking on your friends.
Yeah, because it's like, yes, you are in pain, but at the same time, having someone checking on you and stuff like that, that's love, you know.
Mhm.
And we understand that, or at least I understand that. But allowing me to have the freedom to express myself without feeling like I'm going to offend them, that
Yes.
gives me permission to be honest and say I am up for it today or I am not, you know. And we need to do that. We need to be very open-minded from the two perspectives, and we need to know that asking the person how you're doing, I think, you know, and I understand how it's like, oh my gosh, if I ask how are you doing, she's gonna go back to that memory. But no, they, you know, we don't forget. But the thing is, when you ask how are you doing, you need to be prepared in case the person just wants to cry.
And that's how, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And that has to
When
be
they
okay
tell you
with
how they're
you.
feeling, that then it's like,
Yes.
oh, I wasn't. Ooh,
Yes. If you're asking, you need to, number one, have the time and have the
yes.
intention to listen, not just say it because it's like the right,
Thing to say.
politically, right to do. You need to, because sometimes, like, I would be okay, and sometimes my friend would ask me and I would say I just feel like crying, and it was like, okay, then cry,
You
That's
just
so
cry
and they would
together.
important.
feel better. And then
Yeah.
another times, like, we would sit down and we would not say a word, and then I would start talking about it,
Hmm.
and they would just listen. They would just listen, and they would ask me. So yes, we I guess, like, if you don't know the person very well, I can understand how it would be just like more awkward. But if it's the friends that you have loved all your life and that you're close with, do not be afraid. Do
Yeah.
not be afraid, because they know you're coming from a place of love and a place of not knowing. They don't know what you're going through. They imagine, but they don't know. So
What if
we
they
need
tell
to
you
give
not
each
to
other
call them?
grace. I'm sorry.
What if they tell you don't call me? That's happened to
Well,
me, by the way.
yeah, then you
I don't want to
respect it.
talk to anybody. I love you, but
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to
And
anybody.
that's okay. You need to let them know that it's totally okay. You still love them, and you'll still be there whenever they're ready, you know and
Mhm.
the time will come. I can guarantee you. The reason why my process, I guess, it was just like faster, it's because the Tampa Bay Rays, they support us from the beginning, and we were getting ready for May, which is the month of mental health, and we wanted to make sure that since it was fresh, that people would just like look at it, that they would be more create more awareness. And we partnered up with the Tampa Bay Crisis Center. And she asked me, she said, "Do you think you're ready?" I said, "I don't know if I'm ready, but you have a platform. There's millions of people. There's thousands of parents that are going through the same, and they don't have a platform where they can talk about their experience
Hmm.
and let others know that they're not alone." So we told them, I said, "Will, you're giving us the platform." And I prayed, and I was like, "God, if you give me the platform, we're just going to talk to anybody and everybody, so they know that they're not alone."
Yeah, that's key. I mean, because you do feel a sense of loneliness, and you
Exactly.
kind of retreat to yourself, and you don't want, it's kind of like a taboo. You don't really want to. But I do know I follow you on social media,
Mm-hmm.
and so I noticed that almost every single post is dedicated to Jean.
Yes, yes. I
And
have I have many pictures, and I just make sure that it's a scripture with his picture. I want people to remember, because it's uncomfortable,
yes,
and
I
it needs to be uncomfortable, you know?
Mhm.
listen, that's very admirable and very, and I know you don't like for us to say that you're strong, but that takes a strong person to
Mm-hmm.
post almost every single day
Mm-hmm.
about your journey,
Mm-hmm.
your loss, your grief, your memories. It's a constant. Is that something that helps you? Is that part of your coping mechanism to do that on a regular basis?
Yes, because when I look at the pictures, I want, number one, I want to remember all the good memories that we have. It's 28 years of love and happiness,
Yeah.
and one thing is that when people die by suicide, others tend to focus on the act rather
Mm,
than the way these people live their life.
mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure, and he has lots of great friends and people who really knew him well. They know that he was a beautiful person.
Yes.
So when I post pictures about him, it's just number one, reminding myself that he was a wonderful young man. And, just seeing the pictures, yes, sometimes it hurts more than others, but it just gives me joy to know that I was able to take care of him for all these years. And on the other hand, I want people to not forget his face. And it's not that I want them to feel pain looking at his picture, but I want them to know, hey, sometimes you think that is the homeless person. Sometimes you think it's the drug addict. Sometimes you think it's the person that is going through alcoholism. And those are the people that die by suicide. I want you to look at this young boy that had a wonderful life. So
Mm.
that, the stigma is what attaches all these negative things to someone's, dying by suicide. I want you to know that it happens to normal people, just like you and I.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're doing a great job with
Thank you.
coping with your grief, and it looks like you're partnering with the Tampa Bay Rays. And
Yes.
tell us a little bit about your shirt. I see
Oh,
Gene
yes. So
98.
I have, yes, JR98. His name was Gene Ramirez, and and number 98 was his baseball uniform number. So one of the things that we decided from the beginning was that we were going to find a way to honor his memory.
Mhm.
And it was just by raising awareness for mental health and suicide prevention. So we created our nonprofit organization this last December. And what we do, we go to different places and speak about suicide and mental health. And we raise money, and then we just do community projects. So, for example, we did a community project in Puerto Rico. They had opened a mental health unit for children
Mm.
in the only children's hospital they have. And there's kids from 5 to 17 years old. That's how young we have children with mental illnesses. And so we went there. They gave us a list of supplies that they were needing, and we brought toys. And we had so many friends help us that we were able to support to give toys to everybody in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
So then the second one that we just did was we partnered with Under the Bridge Ministries here in Fort Worth, and they feed the homeless population of the area. And so I went and talked to them and I said, what is one thing that we can do for you? And they said that they needed backpacks. So by raising money, we just went ahead and then we just provided backpacks for them. So what we're doing is like, the speaking part, it's one of the things that we like the most, because I think that when we talk to the kids and when we talk to the young people, they probably see their parents. And I want them to know, how would their parents feel, if they decided, instead of looking for help, that they need to end their life.
Yeah.
So, that part is very heavy on our hearts, but it's a part that we love the most. And then, just like by doing community service, Jean was a very giving person. So I think that every time we're able to do something for the community, we are showing the way that he was,
Yeah.
the love that he had for other people. And that helps us tremendously.
Tony, I just you hit on something when you said Gene wasn't he wasn't uh the picture of what you think a person um would present as that would commit
Mm-hmm.
suicide. You
Mm-hmm.
spoke earlier and you said that he had his dream job,
Mm-hmm.
and he was making plans
Yes.
um for his future, talked about buying a house, and he
Mm-hmm.
he had definite plans. And
Yes.
so um he presented as happy.
Yes.
um and so I think that my question to you
Mm-hmm.
is, would it be absurd to, because I always think when you ask somebody something, you might be planted it in their head when it wasn't there. But is it absurd to ask your children, in your adult children,
Mm-hmm.
who don't share as much as you think they do, have you ever thought of suicide? Doesn't have to be at the dinner table because that's a
Mm-hmm.
downer, but
Right.
have you ever thought about it? And if yes, well, like, how often do you have these thoughts, and why do you think you're having these thoughts? I mean, do you think that it's something that it should become normalized to have these conversations? I think yes, we should definitely, we talk about this all the time, normalizing therapy and mental health discussions, but to specifically ask somebody, have you ever thought about
Yes,
this?
yes, I think so because that way you have a better idea. We need to show them that it's not going to be um, coming from judgment or anything like that. That it's real concern, that it's something that we see way too often. And you know what? Maybe if we ask those questions, we'll be surprised that they have gone through depression, that they have had suicidal thoughts. And, just by us pretending nothing is happening, or by us just being worried about just planting that in their head, is not the way it works
Mm.
you
And
know
I also think it aids in prevention too, because then you have the opportunity, whether they say yes or no to
hmm
the question. You can always add in, well, just know that if you
exactly.
have thought about it, dot dot dot,
Yes.
we are here for you. This would be a heartbreak to us. There are other ways we can work through this. It I think I think it would be very helpful for people to ask. And in some cases, parents might say, oh, my kid, my kid is living her best life. She's, out with her. She's got all these friends and she's partying, and he's doing well. He's at his job, a job that he loves, and he has, he's talking about marrying his girlfriend.
hmm
All of these great things, but you still would be surprised at how many people contemplate this out.
Absolutely, because then, when you think about it, you presenting yourself as having the perfect life, that takes a toll.
That's a lot of
That's a
work.
lot of pressure. That's a lot
Oh,
of pressure. I think about my son, and I think about, oh my gosh, we have spoken to so many people, and he would give away shoes to the people at the club. Like if they would say, oh, those are beautiful shoes, or oh, that perfume and
wow.
stuff like that. And he would just be, very giving and very kind. But I wonder if someone would have asked him, or if
Yeah.
I would have asked him, hey, how's your mental health? I wonder, and then just give him permission to say, hey, regardless of what you say, you know that I love you, you know that I'm here for you.
Mm.
Let's get some help, you know?
Yeah.
Because if they're thinking about it, they're gonna think about it regardless. So it's
Hmm.
not like we're gonna give him an idea. Oh wow, he was not thinking about that, but now since I mentioned it, that's not the way it works. So yeah, definitely we need to just understand that it's a public health crisis,
Yes.
It's the 12th leading cause of death
Wow.
in the United States, and every 59 minutes, a female dies by suicide, and every 14.4 minutes, a male.
Oh, wow.
You know, so this has to be part of our conversations. And like I said, you
Yes.
know, and like you said it perfectly, you know, no judgment. It's like, we're here for you. We want to make sure that you're doing okay. And if you're not, just know that it's okay not to be okay.
Yes.
You don't need to suffer in silence, you know,
Yeah.
because we are here for you. There are plenty of resources that we can use to help you.
Well, Tony, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been eye-opening. You've given us a lot of
you.
good ways to cope and a lot of good
Yes.
ideas, to good, conversation starters with our adult children.
Yes.
I wasn't aware of that statistic that mental health usually comes out in your child's 20s. I didn't know that statistic, but I think that's a conversation that we should start having with our kids,
Absolutely.
right? Because we don't want to have to be having this conversation with another mom. But I really appreciate the way that you're approaching this, and I think we can all learn from everything that you said today. So give us where we can get a shirt and how we can support your. Is it a foundation? Is it a?
Yes, it's a nonprofit foundation. It's JR98 Inc. Our website is jr98inc.com. And all our social media handles on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook is at JR98 Inc. And there, you know, if anybody needs to speak to us, because we have noticed how sometimes the young people do not want to burden their parents with, you know, telling them that they're struggling, but they, you know, since they know that we understand what they're going through, they want to send us a message or they want to call us.
Okay.
You know, and just remembering, we did this, we created these bands, and they have the 988 number, which is the suicide prevention hotline number.
Oh, okay.
So it has it here, 988. So it's good for you to know that 988 is the number where they can call or they can text if they're going through a crisis. And
Oh,
you can call
wow.
911 as well. But yeah, jr98inc.com, and you know, we're accessible. They can call us. We have the phone number in there, and you know, we have all kinds of information there. We have Professor Mario Soto. He's a sports psychologist, and he joined our team, and he's going to be posting information about you know, mental health on a monthly basis. So we have lots of resources there, and you know, we appreciate you having me in your show. I think it's very important for us to just be, you know, open-minded about a problem that many families are going through. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
We appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to having further discussions on mental health, because
Yes,
there are so many ways that mental health presents itself, even as we age, as
Yes.
women of a certain age. I've noticed in myself some things. So
Mm-hmm.
this conversation is not over. We're going to continue the conversation on multiple series going forward. But I really appreciate this conversation with you, Tony, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. A
Bye-bye.
pleasure talking to you.
Yes.